Hello, I'm Larry Wilson, and welcome to the May 2004 Tape of the Month. Before we begin today's study, I just want to remind you that it's subscription renewal time. The subscription renewal for July through December 2004 is now open. And if you would like to receive or continue receiving DVDs or VHS tapes of our monthly broadcast, this is your chance to get them for a very economical price. Let me put the information on the screen for you. $20 for video and $12 for the audio. And the deadline is June 10. June 10. I want to remind you also that VHS tapes will be phased out in December. So this is our last year to offer the monthly broadcast on VHS tapes. We are moving exclusively to DVD, and of course not only us, but the entire multimedia industry is moving to DVD. Here's a picture of one that I recently bought at Walmart for a little more than $43, and you can see it's very small. Here's my Daniel book so that you can get an idea. You just put the DVD in, press the button, and you have 90 minutes of Bible study on DVD. And just think how simple they are to save or to store because they're so small. So I hope that those of you still using VHS tapes will consider getting a DVD player and continuing with our monthly broadcast. As I look around the world today and I look at the craziness and all the nonsense that's going on, I'm impressed that the Lord certainly can't wait much longer. So hurry. We want to do everything we can to understand His Word and study His Word. And so please take advantage of the Tape of the Month broadcast. Get your subscription in before June 10 because after that, the price per video and audio goes up. Well, may God bless you, is my prayer. Hello, I'm Larry Wilson, and welcome to the Wake Up broadcast for May 2004. I hope you have seen the past two presentations because today we're going to build up on certain points established in them to assemble the Jubilee calendar. Now, I know a lot of people don't think the Jubilee calendar is very important, but I want to show and try my best to demonstrate just the opposite. I believe that it's very important and it plays a very integral role to positioning and understanding and translating the 18 apocalyptic time periods in the books of Daniel and Revelation. Let's go to this computer screen. There's a few things that I would like to just refresh your memory on before we begin to assemble the Jubilee calendar. First, I want to remind you that God has 9 clocks in the Bible, and He uses these clocks to measure time periods in prophecy. So if you're going to study Bible prophecy, you've got to understand something about the 18 time periods that God has put in the books of Daniel and Revelation. It is important to understand the Jubilee calendar because the presence or the absence of the Jubilee calendar determines how God translates time, how He measures time in apocalyptic prophecy. Some of the prophetic time periods, like the 70 weeks and the 2300 days, require translation, that is, a day for a year. And other prophetic time periods do not. How can we tell the difference between them? Some translation is necessary in some places, and in other places, other prophetic time periods should not be translated. How do we know when we should and when we shouldn't? How can we determine what God wants us to understand? Well, I thought one word would sum it up very nicely. It's simple. Remember Rule 4? The presence or the absence of the Jubilee calendar determines how God measures time in apocalyptic prophecy. Now, obviously, in order to understand when the calendar is operating and where it's operating, takes some understanding. And that's what we're going to attempt to do today. The Jubilee calendar started with the Exodus in the year 1437 BC, and it operated until April 9, 1994. This is a total of 3,430 years, almost 3.5 millenniums the Jubilee calendar operated. Now you say, well, Larry, how do you know where it started and how do you know when it stopped? Well, that's what this study today is all about. And I'll go ahead and confess that you may have to watch this tape 2 or 3 times to gather all that's being covered here, because today's study, I've got a lot to cover in a short amount of time. And so I hope that you will be able to watch this 2 or 3 times until you clearly understand how it works for yourself. I call the Jubilee calendar the Great Week because it consists of 7 days, and each day is 70 weeks in length. So the Great Week would be a total of 490 weeks. And each week, of course, is 7 years, 3,430 years. This is the Great Week. Don't confuse this with the even larger week called the Grand Week, which has made up of 70 centuries, or 7,000 years. So the Jubilee calendar is the Great Week. Each day in the Great Week is 10 Jubilee cycles, which is also 490 years, or 70 times 7 is 490 years. So there's different ways of identifying the same time period. The idea is that in the Great Week, each day of the week is 70 weeks. Let me show you a little something here. Let me set my chart up so that you can understand more about what I'm saying. Let's go to the Jubilee chart that I have here, and you can see the great day of Monday. Now, I realize the text here is too small to see on your screen, but you should be able to see Jubilee cycle 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. There are 10 Jubilee cycles in the great day of Monday, and each Jubilee cycle is 49 years in length. So there's 49, 49, 49, for a total of 490 years. Or you can say 7 weeks times 10 Jubilee cycles, you have 70 weeks. So the great day in the great calendar, each day is 70 weeks or 490 years. Incidentally, over here you can see the 70 weeks of Daniel 9. Began in 457 BC and terminated in AD 33. 490 years make up the great day of Tuesday in the great week of the Jubilee calendar. And it all started here at the Exodus, year 1, in the great day of Sunday. So each day in the great week is 490 years, 490 years, and 490 years, and it continues on. So when I'm talking about the Great Week, I hope you can understand that we're talking, about these Jubilee cycles. And I'll zoom in a little closer here so that you can see when the decree of Artaxerxes was given in 457. That's at the very beginning of Jubilee cycle 21, the very year, synchronous with the Exodus. 21 Jubilee cycles later, and this continues on the 70 weeks uninterrupted. But we'll say more about this as time goes on. Many scholars say that the Jubilee calendar was nailed to the cross. They say the Jubilee calendar was a civil calendar that was terminated when Jesus died. This is not true. This is simply untrue. And I'm going to prove it in just a second. The point that I want you to consider is that the prophecy in Daniel 9 is 70 weeks in length. And the prophecy in Daniel 9 says that Jesus is going to die in the middle of the 70th week. Now, if the calendar terminated in the middle of the 70th week, you wouldn't have a prophecy of 70 weeks. You'd have a prophecy of 69 and a half weeks. So what happens to the rest of the 70th week if the weekly cycle of years is terminated when Jesus died? We know, according to Daniel 9, that Jesus died in the middle of the 70th week. Let me put that on the screen here for you to look at up a little closer. And we'll say a lot more about this, but let me see if I can get this positioned here for you. You see, here's the 70th week, starting with AD 27, 28, 29, 30. Jesus is crucified on April 7, AD 30. So that's the Wednesday year. That's the middle of the week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Sabbath. So you see, the Jubilee calendar, the weekly cycle of years, can't end with AD 30. The 70th week must go on. Now, I know that most Christians say, hey, the 70th week is way down in the future, and it will occur after the rapture takes place. That, too, is untrue. The 70th week follows the 69th week. The 69th week began here in 18 BC, right here, and completed in 18 AD, and completed in 26 AD. And the Sunday year of the 70th week was 27 AD, and Jesus died in the middle of the 70th week, which was 30 AD. So, let's go back to the computer screen. Jesus died in the middle of the 70th week, so the Jubilee calendar could not terminate in the middle of the 70th week. Here's the 70th week: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sabbath. And so half of the week would be these 3 years, the other half would be these 3 years, and the middle year has to be a Wednesday year. We'll examine this further, but for now, look at this. God established 3 clocks at creation that are based on planetary motion. The day starts at sundown. Its synchrony is from sundown to sundown. The month starts at the conjunction of the moon. In other words, when the moon and the sun and the earth all line up so that the moon is directly between the sun and the earth, we have a new moon or a new month. And then with God's year, this starts in God's clocks with the first new moon on or after the spring equinox. So 3 clocks are based on the motion or commotion of the planet Earth and the moon and the sun. All right? 3 clocks: the day, the month, the year. God also established a 7-day week template or pattern at creation. Very few people stop to realize that God stopped the creation process by resting. He terminated the creation process by resting on the seventh day. When He made the seventh day holy, God terminated a new creation. That is, He terminated the weekly cycle. And He made a perpetual loop of 7 days by forcing the seventh day to be a day of rest. Now, the creation of the weekly cycle is something most people take for granted. They don't ever stop to think about it. But if the weekly cycle wasn't universal, the perpetual round of 7 days would be considered very odd, a very odd unit of time. The weekly cycle exists only in the mind of man. The weekly cycle cannot be discovered by science, nor can its synchrony be determined without tracing its origin back to, you guessed it, creation. There is nothing in nature that reveals the day of the week. Zero. There is nothing in nature that visibly cycles every 7 days. Yet the whole world knows the current day of the week. How did this happen? It happened because God created the weekly cycle, and He based it on His work and His rest at creation. He made a template of the creation week, and 6 of God's clocks are based on this template. The word template means pattern. All 6 clocks are terminated with God's seventh-day Sabbath. Notice, look at the week of days. Sunday is the first day of the week. Sabbath is the seventh day of the week. And the Sabbath terminates the weekly cycle for the week of days. Okay? When Israel came out of Egypt, God gave Israel a religious year. For 7 months, over a period of 7 months, they had various religious festivals. In the month of Nisan, they had Passover. In the 7th month of Tishrei, they had Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and Feast of Tabernacles. So we have 7 months represented by a week of months. God also gave to Israel, when they came out of Egypt, 7-year cycles, so that every 7th year the land was to lay fallow. We've covered this in some detail already, so you know about that, and how that the slaves were to be set free, for they could have a Sabbath rest every 7th year. God also created a week of weeks. In other words, from beginning at the time of the Exodus, God set up cycles of 7 weeks of 49 years. So you might say 1 week would be the Sunday. Another week of 7 years would be the Monday. Another week of 7 years would be a Tuesday, and so forth. We call it the week of 7 weeks. And then I believe that there is convincing evidence in the Bible of the Great Week. That means starting with the Exodus and going down through 1994, we have 7 days of 10 Jubilee cycles each, or 70 Jubilee cycles. And then we have the Grand Week, which takes us from the fall of Adam and Eve to the restoration that is promised. So from the loss of Eden to the restoration to Eden, and the 7 days of 10 centuries each, 7 and 10 there, 7 and 10 here. You see the parallel. So each day represents 1,000 years, because 10 centuries is 1,000 years. So we've looked at 6 clocks. The week of days, the week of months, the week of years, the week of weeks, the Great Week, and the Grand Week. Because each of these 6 clocks have a unique synchrony. We can calculate certain dates if we know one date, because time is an unbroken continuum. See, this is the problem with putting the 70th week in the future. You can't break time. The 69th week is followed by the 70th week. And the 70th week, if you're counting from the decree of Artaxerxes, would be followed by the 71st week, and so forth. Time is an unbroken continuum. Now, when the synchrony of time is known, dates and times can be calculated forward and backward with a high degree of precision. For example, if May 3, 2004 happens to fall on Monday this year, then what day will June 7 be? Well, you say, that's easy. We can calculate that. That's not a problem. Let's look at how the calendar works. If May 3 falls on a Monday, you know that May 10 would fall on a Monday, and you know that May 17 would fall on a Monday, and you would know that May 24 would fall on a Monday, and you know that May 31 will fall on a Monday as well. In other words, because you know the arrangement, the alignment, the synchrony of the days of the week with the day of the month, you can align, once you align these two items, you synchronize them, then you can calculate forward and backward through the calendar any date that you wish. It's very simple. So, if May 3 is a Monday, May 10 will be a Monday, May 17, May 24, May 31, and June 7 will also be a Monday. We can do this type of calculation because time has synchrony. When you know the units in which you're dealing, whether it be weeks or months or years or groups of weeks of years, you can, once you understand and know the synchrony and the alignment of things, the calculation for all other things becomes quite simple to do. Okay. We have studied 9 clocks and their synchrony in previous studies. Now we are ready to put several important pieces of the Jubilee calendar puzzle together. Our study on the Jubilee calendar starts with the life of Jesus on earth because, and I say this emphatically, Jesus is the anchor of the Jubilee calendar. Contrary to what most pastors will tell you, Jesus did not nail the Jubilee calendar to the cross. Actually, He nailed the synchrony of the calendar down at the cross so that we would be able, at the time of the end, to understand the apocalyptic time periods, all 18 of them, in Daniel, in Revelation. And Revelation. Do you realize that Jesus is the anchor of the Julian calendar that we use today? When we say this is year 2004, to what is the number 2004 anchored, if not the birth of Jesus? Now, we know Jesus wasn't born in 1 AD, but that's another story. The point is that this is called the year of our Lord, 2004. The Julian calendar is anchored, presumably, on Jesus. Now, recently, a number of scholars, in trying to ignore Jesus, have changed, the terms BC, which means before Christ. They've tried to make that, they've changed that to BCE, which means before Common Era. It's interesting that what was holy, they're now calling common. So they use the expression BCE to deny the birth of Christ. And AD doesn't mean after death, it means after divinity has been revealed. And so instead of saying BCE, they'll say ACE, after common era. ERA, era. I call it before common error, ERROR. But, that's just me. So think about this. Jesus is the creator, and He's the anchor of the Jubilee calendar. The whole calendar is going to synchronize on the ministry, the birth, the death, the resurrection of Jesus. Jesus came to earth, and His actions confirming the synchrony of the operation of the Jubilee calendar. And this is why dating the ministry of Jesus is so critical. I want to take you now to Daniel 9, verse 26. The prophecy in Daniel is, after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for Himself. That's verse 26 now. After the 62 weeks. Remember, we talked about in verse 25, the 7 and the 62. And after the 62 weeks shall Messiah, I'm taking this right from the King James Version, be cut off, but not for Himself. And He, verse 27, we're talking about Messiah and not Antichrist, which so many people have been misled to believe. And He, the Messiah, shall confirm the covenant. What covenant? The covenant that He gave to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden when they sinned. And He, Messiah, shall confirm the covenant with many, that is, those who believe in Him, for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, middle of the week, He shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. Jesus came. He died right on time in the middle of the week. He confirms the covenant by showing up right on time in the 70th week, and He causes sacrifices and offerings, the oblations at the temple, to cease. Think about that. Now, think about this. We know that a week always begins with Sunday in God's clocks, and it ends with God's Sabbath, the 7th day of the week. So, notice the clock here. Here's Sunday, the first day of the week. Here is Sabbath, the 7th day of the week. And here is Wednesday, which is precisely the middle of the week. We know that a week always begins with Sunday and ends with Sabbath in God's clocks. Therefore, the middle of every week is Wednesday. Jesus is going to die in a Wednesday year. This is a week of years. This is the 70th week, and He's going to die in a Wednesday year. So Daniel actually predicted in Daniel 9 that Jesus would die in a Wednesday year when he wrote this verse. And He, Messiah, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the middle of the week He shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. All right, so we know that the year of Jesus' death is going to be a Wednesday year. There's no wiggle room on that. So, now that we know that He died in a Wednesday year, what was the date of the Wednesday year? The answer is AD 30, and I'm going to prove it right from the Bible. This date can be now proven beyond a fraction of a doubt. Jesus was crucified on April 7, AD 30, at 9 o'clock in the morning. April 7, AD 30. Well, in our next segment, we are going to go through the steps that prove this date. You may say, "Oh, Larry, is this really important? Do we need to burrow down into all of this nitty-gritty?" Well, let me ask you this. When you build a house, how important is the foundation to you? How important is it to you that when your house is built and the whole structure is put together, that the foundation was built on rock and not on sand. It's very important if you want your house to stand. The wise man built his house upon the rock, Jesus said. And those who build their prophetic faith upon the rock of the ages, will not be disappointed. So, put on your scholarly thinking hats, get out your paper and pencil, because this is a topic that, yes, is important and you need to understand it. We'll continue our study in just a moment.